Academic doctor and author of The Legacy of Jihad. Good morning.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
So yesterday I gave what I thought was a very brief definition of jihadism, specifically Salafi jihadism, where I talked about it being, there was an importance, they stressed the importance of returning to pure Islam. And offensive jihad is going after the apostate unbelievers by attacking them in their home. I am sure you have a much fuller understanding of jihad than I do, so please regale us with your knowledge.
Well, I think you got the essentials right there. It's a shared doctrine, unfortunately. It's not just limited to Salafis, but it comes out of the evolution of Islam's prophet Muhammad's behaviors. He did start off as a proselytizer, but as he emigrated to Medina, he began to allegedly receive revelations which encouraged him to become more and more aggressive, and the latter 10 years of his life were spent waging what we would consider to be, again, according to the Muslim narrative, proto-jihad campaigns against real peoples, against Jews, Christians, pagans, etc. And the final revelation of the Quran, again, according to Muslims, there's not a chronological order in the Quran. That's why people find it so difficult to understand at times. But according to the way the Muslims understand the Quran, it's the 9th chapter or surah that's the final revelation, not the 114th, which is the last numerically. And that chapter is a whole series of timeless war proclamations against real people, Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, animists, etc. And so verses in that defining and concluding chapter really leave open-ended the warfare against the unbeliever, and basically the goal is to submit them to Islamic law. It's not necessarily, of course that can involve carnage, but it doesn't have to. If the unbeliever will submit and allow their lands to be taken over and ruled by Islamic law, and then they are in this subservient and frankly rather humiliating status, which was the plight of Jews and Christians and other non-Muslims under Islam, then they can submit non-violently. But that is the doctrine. It's not just expounded in Islam's core text. There's a vast corpus of jurisprudence, which I included many examples from across space and time in the legacy of jihad, which is concordant on this with this view.
So how do they see? Because I'm looking at some of the things that ISIS does or speaks about Shia Muslims and the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, and they seem to be on the hit list as well, but they're not unbelievers. How does the Quran treat them?
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, this gets into a lot of inside Muslim baseball, frankly, which there are endless internecine disputes that have plagued the real history of Islam. You have to remember that the succeeding Muslim rulers after Muhammad himself, the so-called 4 rightly guided caliphs, only one of them died of natural causes, and he only lived for 2 years after Muhammad is believed to have died. That's Abu Bakr. The next 3 rightly guided caliphs were all assassinated. So there have been bloody internecine disputes which have plagued the history of Islam, which led to the breach in Islam's political innocence. The basic Sunni Shiite breach, again, is plagued with assassinations. And because of conspiratorial hatreds, unfortunately, that are hardwired into the belief system, it is the quote-unquote perfidious Jews, in fact, who are believed to be responsible for this breach in the political innocence. In other words, there's a theme in Islam, in the early histories of Islam, which is frankly not only anti-Semitic, it's very racist. The Sunnis believe that a Yemenite Jew, Abdullah ibn Saba, was in fact the originator of the Shiite heresy, and he's identified in very bigoted terms as, quote, the son of a black woman, And so it's both a racist and anti-Semitic theme that he fomented this breach. How do the Shiites deal with it? The Shiites, of course, say, well, no, he introduced heresies into Shiism, Abdullah ibn Saba, again, this black Yemenite Jew, and Ali, who is the fourth rightly guided caliph and who is revered by the Shia as their leader, as their caliph, and the caliphs in succession are supposed to come through his lineage. Ali allegedly had Abdullah ibn Saba, this black Yemenite.
This is very difficult to follow, Andrew. We have a short time in this radio audience. Can we bring this back to our Catholic audience real quickly? Pope Francis says it is blasphemy to be violent in the name of God, and yet the ISIS, the Islamic State, celebrating the Paris attacks where 129 people are killed, hundreds are wounded. How can that be a religious celebration?
Oh, very easily, because the Quran in the 33rd surah tells Muslims that the idealized man for them to emulate is their prophet Muhammad, and Muhammad was the prototype jihadist. Muslim jurists, ancient and modern, have celebrated this facet of the prophet's life, and in fact, if you look at many of his pronouncements, he says things like he was made victorious through terror. So he orchestrated political assassinations, mass killings. The infamous killing of the Jewish tribe Banu Qurayza was not only fomented by Muhammad referring to a Quranic epithet for Jews, the Jews as apes and pigs, which you hear repeated ad nauseum to this day. When they were submitted, it was Muhammad who personally beheaded them. So we have to come to grips with these kinds of stark differences between Islam and Judaism and Christianity when it comes to these kinds of behaviors.
I'm sure that's the basic premise then of the legacy of jihad. Andrew Bostom, academic doctor and author, joining us on Morning Glory. We appreciate you being with us today, and thank you for the explanation.
Thank you so much.
Let's go